Section 6. Leaning closer to the circle of firelight, you watch as Anwar handles a particularly fragile-looking scroll. The script is unlike any you've seen tonight. Elegant, looping, but with strange, angular characters that look like bird tracks frozen in ink. This, he explains in a hushed tone, is Sogdian. It was the lingua franca of the Silk Road for centuries, the language of trade and treaties, spoken from Samarkand to the gates of China. But now its sound is a ghost. You're looking at a linguistic fossil. The voices that once read this aloud, that haggled in markets and whispered prayers in this tongue, are silent. It's a language that connected continents, and now it's deader than the ruins of the caravanserai you're sitting in. A popular historical event to anchor, this is the eventual dominance of Persian and later Turkic languages across the region, which slowly pushed languages like Sogdian into obscurity and eventual extinction. But here's a strange and poignant fact. Some of the most important Sogdian manuscripts we have today weren't found in grand libraries. They were discovered as recycled paper, used to line the coffins of the dead, or as stuffing for the soles of old shoes. Their sacred and commercial texts literally trodden underfoot for centuries. It's a humbling thought that the last remnants of a great commercial empire were used as shoe insulation. Historians still fiercely debate the exact reasons for Sogdian's complete disappearance, arguing over the roles of political conquest, shifting trade routes, and pure cultural assimilation. As Anwar carefully re-rolls the scroll, you feel the weight of that loss. Every word on that page is a locked door, and there are fewer and fewer people left in the world with the key. The fire pops, and for a moment the silence around the Sogdian text feels deeper than the desert night. Section 7. The memory of the peaceful caravanserai is abruptly shattered by the story Anwar begins to tell next, his voice dropping to a near whisper. He speaks of a city, a gleaming jewel on the Silk Road, that found itself surrounded, its gates hammered by the siege engines of a ruthless warlord. The city's great library, a static, magnificent thing of stone and parchment, was the first target. Fire, Anwar says, the word hissing in the quiet, is the enemy of memory. But the city's scholars and a handful of quick-thinking merchants, the ancestors of men like Anwar, had a plan. While the static library burned as a decoy, they did the unthinkable. They broke their own rules of preservation. They disbound the most precious codices, separating the illuminated covers from the text blocks. The individual folios, the very heart of the books, were distributed among dozens of merchants in the caravan that was scheduled to slip out through a secret pass that very night. It was a desperate, calculated act of literary triage. They saved the words by sacrificing the books as cohesive objects. Imagine the scene. Panicked scribes, their hands smudged with soot, hastily dividing a volume of astronomy. One man taking the stars of spring, another the constellations of winter, none of them knowing if they'd ever be reunited. A popular historical parallel is the famous burning of the Library of Alexandria, a symbol of catastrophic permanent loss. But this story is its opposite, a narrow, frantic escape. A bizarre but true fact from this era. To waterproof the precious pages for the desperate river crossings that followed, the merchants reportedly rubbed them with a mixture of mutton fat and beeswax, making the manuscripts feel greasy and smell faintly of a kitchen larder, but saving them from ruin. Historians still debate the identity of the city in this story, with theories pointing to Merv, Nishapur, or other great centers of learning that faced similar fates. The story ends not with a grand reunion of the pages, but with their scattering. Those greasy, fat-smelling folios became seeds, carried on the wind of commerce, taking root in libraries and memories thousands of miles apart. The library was lost, but its words, fractured and dispersed, survived. Section 8A's The Fire Burns Lower. Anwar's stories turn to a specific, almost mythical figure from his own family's oral history, a woman known only as Lian, his great-grandmother many times over. She wasn't a queen or a warrior, but a merchant of modest means who traveled the routes between Dunhuang and Kashgar. Her specialty wasn't silk or spices, but stories. She was a walking archive of the steppes, a living database of the oral histories, genealogies, and folk tales of the dozens of nomadic tribes she traded with. While male scholars like Anwar often focused on the great texts, astronomy, philosophy, religion, Lian collected the quiet histories. She knew which chieftain's great-grandfather had made peace with the wolves, which clan discovered the hidden oasis by following a wounded swan, and the exact recipe for the fermented mare's milk that could, according to legend, ease a broken heart. She carried no heavy chests. Her library was in her head, and in a small exquisite notebook made of the finest Chinese paper, bound in deerskin, where she recorded these fragments in a tiny, precise script. She was the Wikipedia of ephemeral knowledge, a one-woman preservation society for the things that official histories considered too small to notice. A popular historical figure you might think of is Ban Zhao, the Chinese historian and scholar, but Lian operated in the opposite sphere, unofficial, uncredentialed, and utterly essential. A wonderfully odd fact: her deerskin notebook was said to be sealed with a clasp made from a single carved wolf tooth, a token of gratitude from a shaman of a northern tribe whose lineage she had helped him remember. Historians still fiercely debate the reliability of such oral histories, questioning how much was faithfully recorded and how much was embellished over generations of retelling. But as Anwar recounts a gentle, meandering tale Lian collected about the friendship between a lost child and a Bactrian camel, you understand that her work wasn't about cold, hard facts. It was about preserving the soul of the people who moved across this land, a soul that would have otherwise been scattered by the wind like dust. Section 9 Anwar reaches into the cedar chest, past the philosophical and medical texts, and retrieves a long, narrow scroll case made of aged leather. He unrolls its contents with a particular kind of reverence. It's not a text, but a map, a celestial map. The parchment is a deep, inky blue, and across it, constellations are painted not in simple white, but in delicate silver leaf that shimmers in the firelight, mimicking the true brilliance of the stars over the desert. This, Anwar whispers, was our true road. He traces a line connecting a series of stars with his finger. This path, the merchant's bow, was only visible for 3 months of the year. If you missed its rising, you would wait in Samarkand or risk getting lost in the emptiness. The nomadic libraries didn't just contain stories of the earth, but charts for the sky. This was hard, practical science. Your caravan's navigator wouldn't just be looking at landmarks. He'd be consulting a manuscript like this, comparing the positions of the stars to the diagrams painted centuries before, his life and the lives of everyone with him depending on its accuracy. It's a humbling thought, your entire survival hinging on a hand-painted map of the heavens, likely copied from a copy of a copy, and the ability of one tired man to read it correctly. A popular historical event to anchor, this is the immense contribution of Islamic astronomy, which synthesized knowledge from Greece, India, and Persia, creating star charts of stunning accuracy that guided travelers for centuries. But here's a strange and lovely fact. Many of these celestial maps also included illustrations of the mythical creatures believed to inhabit the cosmos. So next to the perfectly plotted position of the constellation we call Orion, you might find a detailed drawing of a great celestial wolf, forever chasing a silver sheep across the sky. It was a blend of rigorous observation and beautiful superstition. Historians still debate the extent to which these mythological elements were considered literal truth by the navigators, or whether they were simply a traditional decorative way to remember the patterns. As you look at the shimmering silver wolf on the page, you realize that for these travelers, the sky wasn't a cold, empty void. It was a storybook, a clock, and a compass, all rolled into one, and their most precious libraries held the key to reading it. Section 10, the celestial map, is carefully re-rolled and placed back into its protective case, a silent testament to a world guided by the stars. But Anwar's next words carry a different tone, one of inevitable change. He speaks of the slow tectonic shift that began to render his kind of library obsolete. It wasn't a sudden catastrophe, not a fire or a storm, but something more insidious, the rise of empires. Great centralized powers with fixed capitals, the Mongols, the Timurids, later the Ottomans, and the Ming, began to impose a new order on the chaotic, free-flowing world of the Silk Road. They built monumental libraries of stone, like the Topkapi Palace Library or the Forbidden City's archives, vast and immovable repositories of knowledge. Why rely on a dusty merchant with a greasy, mutton-fat-rubbed manuscript when you could summon the finest scholars to your court and have them copy every known text into a single, glorious, and stationary collection? The caravan, the lifeblood of the nomadic library, was now just a supply chain, a delivery service for knowledge that would now be owned, controlled, and curated by emperors and sultans. It was the difference between a decentralized internet and a single state-run television channel. The knowledge didn't disappear. In fact, it was often preserved more securely, but it stopped moving. It stopped being traded in caravanserais and started being catalogued in palace basements. A popular historical event marking this shift is the reign of the Mongol ruler Kublai Khan, who, while maintaining the Silk Road security, also centralized administration and scholarship in his capital Xanadu. A bizarre but true footnote: some of the last nomadic librarians, seeing the writing on the wall, tried to adapt by creating miniature, pocket editions of popular texts, tiny Qurans, infinitesimal poetry collections, as if making the knowledge more portable could somehow preserve their way of life. It was a poignant, futile gesture. Historians still debate whether this centralization was a net good, preserving more knowledge in the long run, or a net loss, suffocating the vibrant, democratic, and cross-cultural exchange that had flourished on the road. The world was getting bigger in terms of empires, but smaller in terms of the free flow of ideas, and the nomadic library was becoming a relic,